I was in Los Angeles in 2015, but
Yeah.
I did it in a little bit of a, it's what I call sliders of America, because I did sort of 5 days in New York, kind of 5 days in LA, and then sort of 3 days in San Francisco. And I think back then I was on holiday for a start, and I didn't kind of like, I went down to 14th Street and saw Remote Control Productions. I saw,
Yeah.
like Harry Gregson Williams' studio, like in Venice Beach, although I think he'd actually moved. It looked pretty damn shut when I was there.
Okay. Yeah.
But I kind of scouted these places out. I went to Sony and managed to get into the Barbra Streisand scoring stage, and that was awesome. And kind of met some guys, and I was there for 4th of July, kind of like, it's probably illegal, but sort of drinking beers on the sidewalk and sort of partying and whatever else. And it's crazy. I was wearing like an Abbey Road studios, because I've been being from London, I've been in Abbey Road, and I was wearing a t-shirt, and people are going crazy, like, man, Abbey Road, like, you've been to Abbey Road, man? They're just coming up and talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a composer too. I'm like, really? Like, and you're swapping cards, and the whole thing was just incredible to me, man. Like, I'm in an Uber,
Yeah.
talking to some dude about, I love film music or whatever, and he's like, oh, you want to go to, I think it's the Buffalo Lounge in Santa Monica, and that's where Hans Zimmer's techs kind of hang out and get their drink in there. So
Yeah.
I suppose my question is, like, I did the LA thing, but not
Hmm.
properly. I want to come back and do it from more a business standpoint. I know you went last year,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you went to, I saw you post, like, you spent a day with the guys at Gothic Storm, like you had a conversation, like, around, I thought, was it Ghostwriter you with as well? You spent a couple of days there. Like, how did you find it, man, LA?
Um, well, really, it helped that I was writing for them because I kind of had a destination, and then from there, well, really, I've been to LA 3 times now in the past year and a half, I'd say. So that's been good. And every time's been a little bit different. But initially, the way my first time to LA, the reason was that my publisher, Ghostwriter Music, was actually doing a composer meetup. So they invited a bunch of composers to meet at this bar. And, there was a lot of people that were going to be flying into Los Angeles for this event, and myself included. So that's why I went to Los Angeles in the first place. And so I met all the ghostwriter guys, and then at the event itself, there's all these other composers that are coming in, and it's just networking at that point, just meeting tons of different people, and people that don't necessarily do trailer music, but do, TV music and, film scoring and all these different avenues. And that really kind of opened doors for, the next time I went to Los Angeles. I'd hang out with these friends that I met before, and they'd introduce me to these guys. And more recently, like this time I was in Los Angeles back in February, I have a buddy that works down at Remote Control, and he gave me a tour of the place, and we actually got to sit inside Hans
Oh
Zimmer's
man,
studio, which
incredible.
was, oh man, yeah, that pictures don't do it justice. It was really a neat place to see. But every time I've been there, it's been a little bit different, and it just seems like I meet someone new each time I go there. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Six Trailer Music, but Sam that works there, he lives in the United Kingdom, and he was visiting Los Angeles around the same time I was visiting Los Angeles, and I've never really messaged him before. I know who he is, but I've never messaged him before. But I saw he was in Los Angeles, and then I shot him a message, and we kind of talked back and forth, and next thing you know, we're meeting up in Santa Monica, just grabbing coffee and just kind of just talking, small talk or whatever. And that's kind of how it goes, man. Like, people out there are there to network, so it's not too hard to find, like-minded people, and then you start building from there.
Absolutely, it is incredible. I mean, I think because over here in London, I think us Brits have got this sort of, we're quite guarded about, like, if someone comes to you and they're trying to sort of network with you, and this is true, man. It's almost like you're straight away, the other person's thinking, what does this guy want? And it's
Yeah.
like we put this wall up in London, and it's a nightmare. Like, if you're going somewhere, you've got to be a +1, or you go Groucho Lounge. You got to be, Groucho Lounge is like a place in Soho where essentially you can hang out if you're in the industry and not be bothered. So I suppose it does make sense. They just don't want anybody sort of go in there, for that. But that was definitely my take home from spending time. I think just in the States in general, man. Like, I didn't have one bad experience,
That's awesome.
in my entire stay, and New York, it was like I was a local. people asking me directions. I'm like, yeah, man, go up there to the top of the block and take that kind of thing. Like, but it's definitely, and I suppose I was maybe a little cynical when I came back from LA. Like, I had all these business cards, and I was kind of bummed out to be home. I wanted to spend a bit more time there and whatever else. And I emailed everyone and kind of said, hey, it's Mike. We met in this place. We met in that. Every single person emailed me back. And
Wow.
it's like you say, it's very much like, hey, if you're back again, I'll show you where, if you want to live in LA, it's like, you got to move to LA, Mike. They'll love you here, I'll show you West Hollywood. You want to avoid the traffic and you can stay on my couch. And it's like, just the openness of it was just incredible, man. Like,
Yeah.
so I think, that's actually one of the things the guys were talking about in the in Dirk's live stream, which I say is happening now. They were saying is, do you have to live in Los Angeles in order to become kind of like successful? And I suppose
Yeah.
that's kind of a question I had for you. Obviously, you're in the States.
Yeah.
Do you think because the consensus over there was that it's not necessary, but you have the opportunity, like we've been discussing, you can do those meetups, you can do those networking events. It's not going to make you successful, but it's perhaps going to put you in, set you up in the right place to do so. Do you think this? What's your take on that?
Right. I don't think it's necessary. I think with the internet and the way things are, I think you can make a living at it living anywhere in the world. But what I will say is, even if you don't plan on living in Los Angeles, I highly recommend going. Because each time I go, I learn so much. Talking with composers that are living there and they're working there, they have just opened my eyes to just how many possibilities there are out there to make a living writing music. If you kind of stay where you're at and you don't travel and make those kind of connections and that kind of network, you're kind of really just left with, your own thoughts in that way. It's totally, while the internet is very important and you can network very well that way, there's just something to be said about like face-to-face communication. And it's hard to explain. I feel like I've learned more in a week in Los Angeles than I have, say, in a year just from internet networking. It's just, I don't know. That said, I do plan on moving to Los Angeles someday.
Here we go, see?
Yep, yeah, there's just opportunity out there. And while I love Michigan, really there's not much going on out here, at least in terms of, film music or trailer music. It's different, and I want the opportunities. I want the networking. I don't know. And overall, man, I'm ready to get out of the snow, to be honest. The winters here are brutal. I'm sure they are in London too, man.
It's like, you want that sun.